Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I will be going over the long list of the Europese Literatuur Prijs, or the European Literature Prize, which is a prize that awards the best novel translated to Dutch from a European country, and I'm going to see if I want to embark on the project of reading that entire long list. So maybe you've noticed that I don't talk much about the big book prizes here on the channel. I do keep an eye out on them. I'll check out what's on the Booker shortlist, long list, the Women's Prize, the International Booker. It's just as soon as I hear more than 3 people talk about the book, or about the same 10, 12, 16 books, I lose all interest in reading them. And then usually it will take me a couple of years after everyone has stopped talking about them for me to pick them up. And I'm sure it's not the fault of the books, nor of the people who talk about them, but I just get bored with them pretty quickly. But I always wanted to join in with the fun of reading an entire long list of a book prize and then like predicting a winner and all that jazz. So when the long list of the European Literature Prize was announced last week, I figured this would be perfect, because the thing with Dutch translations is that sometimes they get released later, sometimes years later than the English translation, sometimes around the same time and sometimes before that. So for English-speaking readers, this list will be a mix of backlist titles, current titles and future releases. So yeah, even though it is technically a Dutch book prize, I think it will still be interesting to you. And I looked at the list and I had already read 4 of them, which immediately made it a lot more manageable. And lastly, I can get all these books from my local library. And that is definitely something that has deterred me from reading something like the Women's Prize long list, because for that particular prize the books that are eligible have to be published from, I think, April the previous year through March the current year, and they announced their long list at the beginning of March, which means it could have books that haven't even been published yet, and my library is not going to carry those books, or at least not for a while. In fact, just for the sake of this video, I had a look at which of the Women's Prize long-listed books my library had available over 2 months after the long list has been announced, and they had 4 out of the, I think it's 16. So that meant that if I wanted to read the long list, I had to buy 12 probably pretty expensive, because only out in hardback, books, which would make it a pretty expensive undertaking. That's all to say that if I wanted to read a book prize, I felt like this was going to be the one for me. So like I said, the European Book Prize is awarded to a book from Europe that has been translated to Dutch. The books that are eligible are from the previous calendar year. It's a prize that awards both the author and the translator. They both get, I think, 10,000 euros worth of prize money. The long list is selected by a bunch of indie bookstores all around the country, and then a jury, which I think this year has 2 authors, 2 booksellers and a translator. A jury decides on the shortlist and the eventual winner, and the shortlist is announced at the end of June, and then the winner will be announced at the beginning of September. I think that's all the specifics. Let's get into the books. I'm going to give some quick thoughts on each of them, and also whether there is an English translation or not, and I'll try and write down all the books and all the information down below. There is 14 books on the long list, and I'm going through them in the order that the prize has them on their website, which is alphabetical by title. So first we've got Een breuk in april by Ismail Kadare. This is translated from the Albanian by Roel Schuyt. This book has also been translated to English as Broken April. Now this book was first published in 1978 and it had another Dutch translation before, which is now out of print. So this is a new translation, and so that way we can have a book that is 45 years old be eligible for a book prize. This book is set in the remote Albanian mountains and it centers a blood feud, which is a very old moral code that is still upheld within the tribes that live in the Albanian mountains. And I think the book looks at the clash between these very old traditional laws and modern day society, or at least 1978 society. I don't think I've ever read anything from Albania before, and I think it's a book that will teach me a little bit about the history of that country. So yeah, this is definitely a book I'm looking forward to read. The next book is Een klein detail by Adania Shibli, translated from the Arabic by Djuke Poppinga. It's a Frisian first name, which is not a language I speak. In English this is published as a minor detail. Again, I'm not sure how this is up for a European book prize since the author is Palestinian. Maybe she lives in Europe right now, so it counts. I don't know, and I don't care, because this is a great book and it deserves the recognition. This is a slim novel divided into two parts. In the first we read the story of a Palestinian girl who was very brutally assaulted by Israeli soldiers in 1949, and then the second part is about a Palestinian woman who reads about this assault almost as a side note in a history book and decides to learn more about it. I have read this book in the English translation a few years back, and even though it's only short, it taught me a lot on the occupation of Palestine and what it was like to live under Israeli occupation. And of course now the book will have a whole different layer to it, and depending on how quickly I will go through the rest of the long list, I think I would really like to read this in the Dutch translation as well. Then we've got Een schitterend wit by Fosse. This is translated from the Norwegian by Marianna Molenaar. The English translation of this is called A Shining. Fosse won the Nobel Prize, for Literature last year, but I have to be honest that I've never heard of this author before that. This is a very slight little book. I think it's only about 70 pages or so, and it's about a man who's driving at a snowy night. He finds himself lost at the end of a forest road, but instead of turning back and trying to look for help, he gets out of the car and walks into the forest. And since the book is so short, I think that's about all we need to know. It definitely sounds a little bit spooky. Next is Empusion by Olga Tokarczuk, another Nobel Prize winner. This is translated from the Polish by Karol Lesman, and the English translation of this will be coming out in September of this year. I finished this book only a few weeks ago. It is inspired by The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann. The main character goes to stay at a sanatorium to get treatment for tuberculosis. This is set in the early 20th century. So it's about all the people he meets and what they do and what they talk about, and it has a little sprinkling of the supernatural about it. It was my first time reading Olga Tokarczuk, and it won't be my last, although I don't think this will be my favorite on the list. But I'm not reviewing the books yet, that will be another video. Then we have Erfgrond by Maria Turtschaninoff. This is translated from the Swedish by Janny Middelbeek-Oortgiesen. This hasn't been published in English yet, but I did see that the translation rights were sold to Pushkin Press, which is a great press for translated fiction, specifically from Europe. Maria Turtschaninoff is a Finnish author, and I thought her name looked familiar, and then I realized she's the author of Maresi, which is a first book in a YA series, which is about a group of girls and women who go live on an island to escape their abusive husbands and male family members, which was a very cool feminist magical realist book. This book, however, is written for adults, and it's a multi-generational family saga spanning, I think, 4 centuries of a family living on a farm in the north of Finland. Yes, please, historical fiction, family saga, rural Scandinavian setting, sign me up. And also, from what I get, it's written in a connected short story style, which I love. Okay, let's not get too excited. Moving on, next is Geest, komt, by Isabella Hammad. This is translated from English by Gerda, Baardman and Nijs. The English title of this is Enter Ghost. I read this for the first round of the Literature Prize this year, and it's also shortlisted for the Women's Prize. It's about a Palestinian woman who lives in London but returns to visit her sister in Haifa and ends up joining in with an Arabic production of Shakespeare's Hamlet, I think. I don't really need to tell you about it. So many people are reading this book right now, and rightly so. It's really, really good. Next is Halfbaard by Charles Lewinsky. This is translated from the German by Annie Schippers, and Lewinsky is from Switzerland. And from what I gathered, this is a coming-of-age story set in the Middle Ages in the Swiss Alps. I am definitely intrigued by this. It is quite a chunky novel. I think it's around 500 pages, but I am very keen on reading this. I love a bit of historical fiction, and the Middle Ages are not a period that is written about a lot in historical fiction. So yeah, I'm very keen to read this. I couldn't find anything about an English translation yet for this book. Then we have Lesson or Lessons by Ian McEwan, translated from English by Nick Miedema and Harm Damsma. I read this for the Literature Prize last year. I hated it with a passion, and I don't want to talk about it, so I won't. Moving swiftly on. The next book is De laatste dagen van Europa by Antonio Scurati. This is translated from the Italian by Jan van der Haar. This is actually the last book in a trilogy. It's a fictionalized account of the life of Mussolini. And this particular installment is about the years just before the Second World War. I could find an English translation for the first book in the trilogy that is called M, the Son of the Century, but I don't know if and when the translations of the next 2 books in the trilogy will be coming out. Since this is a book in a trilogy, I'm not entirely sure yet what I will do. I don't know if it is necessary to read the first 2 books or if I can read it just on its own. But the first book is a 800 plus page and the second volume 600 plus page novels. So I think I'll just try and read only the third one. What I'll do is I'll put it towards the end of my reading list, and then when the shortlist is announced and it's still on there, I'll figure out what to do. Next is a book that I'm very keen to read, and that is Moedermelk by Nora Ikstena. This is translated from the Latvian by Brenda Lely. I don't think I've ever read a Latvian author before, so that's exciting. This is another one where there's quite a big gap between the original and the translation, although not as big as with the Ismail Kadare book. This was first published in 2015, and an English translation came out in 2018 called Soviet Milk. It is set in Latvia through the 1940s and 1980s when it was under Soviet occupation. It deals with a mother and daughter relationship, and that's about all I know about it. This book is definitely having a moment in the Dutch Bookstagram community, at least like within the bubble I am in. A lot of people whose reading taste I love have read and love this book, so I'm really looking forward to this one. Then we have Nikki by Christos Komenides. This is translated from the Greek by Hero Hokverda. It was published first in 2014, so also quite a gap between the original and the translation. There's an English translation that came out last year as well, also called Nikki. And this is another historical fiction. We follow the life of our titular character Nikki, who was born in 1938. And I guess we follow her through her life and then learn something about Greek history along the way. I realize there's quite a few historical fiction novels on this book, which I'm not mad about. I mean, I know very little about Greek history, so this will be a great way to get a taste of that. Next is The Age of Destroying by Pauline Peyrade, translated from the French by Kiki Kouwmans. I was very confused by this because it has an English title. Is it a Dutch book? Is it an English book? But yes, it is Dutch, and I wasn't able to find an English translation. And I guess I'll figure out why the author decided to have an English title for the book, or the translator decided to have an English title for the book once I've read this book. This is another shorty, about 120 pages or so, and it's about a mother and daughter relationship that is apparently quite toxic and abusive, and I'm hoping this will be one of those small but devastating and impactful novels, and it will really pack a punch. Okay, we are getting to the end of the list, only 2 more to go. Next is Vernietigen by Michel Houellebecq, translated from the French by Martin de Haan. I won't be reading this book because of the author being misogynistic, racist and Islamophobic. I just don't want to spend my time on anyone like that. There is plenty of books that I have no interest in reading that I would read before this one. So yeah, no, not for me, even if it wins. I also didn't look up what it's about, but I did find there will be an English translation called Annihilation coming in September. And then the last book in the list is Weken, Maanden, Jaren by Sarah Baum. This is translated from the English by Lette Vos, and the original title of this is Seven Steeples, and Sarah Baum is an Irish author. This is about a couple who moved to the Irish countryside because they wanted to retreat from society and like reconnect to nature. From what I gather, it has very beautiful, sparse writing, and it's a very quiet sort of story, which could be right up my alley, but we'll see. So there we have it, that's the entire list. I'm pretty excited to embark on this project, except for obviously the Michel Houellebecq. All of these books really interested me. I think the fact that we have books from 12 different countries on this list really excites me, and I'm looking forward to explore some literature from all over Europe. Like I said, the shortlist will be announced at the end of June, I think the 26th. So I will try and read as many of these before that. But if I won't manage, and I probably won't, I will see what gets shortlisted and what I still want to read after that. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video. Have you heard of any of these books? Are there ones that you are particularly interested in? I hope I made it relevant enough for an international audience, even though it is a Dutch book prize. But yeah, I think it is. Right, that is it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking your time, and I will see you in my next video. Bye bye.